Between the two of them. The inside of coats. Parker gets too heavily involved. And that's Whitehead and Coates.
Just a good old boy, never meaning no harm. Beats all you never saw, been in trouble with the law since the day they was born. Straightening the curves, flattening the hills. Someday the mountain might get them, but the law never will. Making their way the only way they know how. That's just a little bit more than the law will allow. Just a good old boy, they wouldn't change if they could. Fighting the system like a true modern day Robin Hood.
We'll turn this around. Don't turn this around. We'll turn this around. We'll turn this around. We'll turn this around.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome along to the VRRC and round 6 and 7 of the AGON by AOC Mazda MX5 Cup. We're getting into the middle part of the season now, and after a thrilling pair of races at the Circuit of the Americas in Texas a week ago, we continue our American tour in Georgia with the Road Atlanta circuit. This winding, undulating string of tarmac is always a challenge for the drivers and should hopefully provide us with a really entertaining 40-minute pit stop race, because we are having our second mini endurance race of the season tonight. So the sprint racing format is put on the shelf for a week, and instead it's a game of strategy, tyre management, and pit stops that will decide the outcome of this fourth event of the season. Andy McEwan and Jack Oliphant here in the commentary box once again. And Jack, we're getting into the middle part of the season now. Some championship favourites are starting to emerge, but I wonder how the next hour or so of action on track might change the complexion of the championship.
Yeah, well, I've been looking forward to Road Atlanta, to be honest. It's I don't know loads of the tracks particularly well. Bridgehampton, I'm not particularly familiar with. Watkins Glen, I've only ever sort of driven once. Virginia, I've only ever commentated on once, sort of thing. So Road Atlanta is one of the circuits that I really enjoy, and we've changed the tyres slightly. We've changed a few of the sort of aspects to try and make it a slightly more interesting 40 minutes grueling race for all the drivers. And I think the first sector of this track specifically is going to be quite punishing for drivers who haven't done the practice on those tyres. So we'll explain a little bit more about that in the coming weeks. But you're absolutely right, 40 minutes is the second of the endurance events. We have got two more up for you. It's Sebring and Watkins Glen to close out the entire season. But if you're a fan of the sprint races, then don't fear. They'll be back at Bridgehampton and VIR.
Indeed so. We alternate with the endurance and sprint race format throughout the course of the season, so there's something for everyone. And I think that's a good way of doing it, really. It means that the drivers are given a full test of everything that they know, because not only do you have to have really good racecraft in those shorter sprint races, but also the ability to manage your tyres, plan a strategy, and even improvise a strategy as the race develops, which will certainly be the case over the 40-minute race here tonight. So there you can see the way that the rest of the season will look. With those 4 more events to go. We have prizes on offer as well, not just the trophies that you can see there on the top right-hand corner, but also we have, courtesy of our series sponsor, AGON, these brilliant monitors up for grabs as well. The top 3 drivers at the end of the championship will receive these. For third place, a 24-inch AGON display, 27-inch display for the championship runner-up. But the big prize that they're all aiming for is the 34-inch AGON curved gaming display, which is a brilliant prize and the perfect way to finish off your sim racing setup. And I'm sure that all of the drivers entered into the championship are going to be really keen to get their hands on that. At the moment, though, it's looking very difficult to predict who's going to do that, because the championship table is very, very close as we arrive here at Road Atlanta. A week ago, Josh Martin came out as the top scorer. Josh Martin was the winner of race 1 and then managed to recover from the back of the grid to finish 4th in the reversed grid race. Kyle Felvers, the second highest point scorer, arguably should have scored more, but he was given a post-race penalty after race 1 for contact with Eric Axelsen, who was the third highest point scorer a week ago. And that, Jack, we sort of saw coming.
Yeah, we semi-predicted it on the stream, didn't we? And obviously, they don't take our opinions into consideration, thank God, because we're just lowly commentators. What do we know? But yeah, I think Carl Felver sort of knew it was coming a little bit. I don't think there was too much of a protest about it. And Eric Axelsen just picking up points, as Eric Axelsen does in third place as well. And how does that lead the championship? Well, I'm sure we can show you now. There it is. Now, Eric does have 98 points. Now, this is including drop rounds and everything like that, which we will break down a little bit in more detail, probably when we come to the penultimate round, so everybody's on the same page. But just take these at face value. Eric Axelsen with 98 points, and in joint second place, arguably, is Carl Felvers and Joel Lask. They're only 8 points difference of Eric Axelsen. So, yeah, that's very, very close between the top 3. Josh Martin's had a nice charge from Cota, and he's up to 4th place with the 79 points. Nicky Taylor in 5th with Elliot Dalton-Ayres in 6th. Jens Verhoeven 7th, Ethan Hill in 8th place with Andy Carroll in 9th, Reece Bell in 10th, and Sam Zero is in 11th place with 40 points. There are plenty of other drivers: John Jones, Simon Thorpe, Alok Iyengar, Paul Laramie, Kenny Preston, Nathan Blank, but they've sort of hit and miss whether they've attended every single round. I believe most of them are here tonight, though, apart from potentially one, which I think is Reece Bell. Unfortunately, he might be slightly injured, so he doesn't want to risk his neck or shoulder, apparently. So, yeah, he won't be here tonight. Hopefully, he'll be back for the last couple of rounds.
Indeed so, looking very tight though, as you said, in the championship standings. And remember that tonight it is double points on offer because we only have the one race to make it fair from a drop scores perspective. They double the amount of points available for a race win, and indeed for every position within these 40-minute races. So the same amount of points are available week in, week out. That does, though, however, put a little bit more pressure on the drivers because a bad result tonight can be doubly punishing in a way because you don't get that second opportunity in race 2 to bounce back and reclaim those points. So it could be a really important night. So that's how the championship standings look. Then the car, many of you will be familiar with now if you've been following this MX5 Cup over the last few weeks. It is the highly modified version of the Mazda MX5 Mark IV Cup car, which is available for you all to use on the Assetto Corsa platform. The original with its 2-litre inline naturally aspirated engine producing around about 160 brake horsepower. Just the one compound of tyre normally available, the harder, slower, not as grippy compound of tyre, plus no option to adjust your brake bias or differential. Well, we throw that all out of the window here at the VRRC. We add a turbo to the engine, producing an extra 80 brake horsepower. We also throw in that hybrid system, which the drivers can use on 15 different occasions over the course of the race. That doesn't change, even though this is a longer race. They still only have the 15 activations for 10 seconds each, with a 2-second cool-off period between uses. 3 compounds of tyre to choose from. That will definitely be of some interest tonight as they try and figure out which of those tyres is going to be the best to use in the 2 stints, essentially, over the course of the race. Remember, that soft tyre is wearing out a bit more now, and that medium tyre should have a little bit more grip, so I expect that to be a slightly tastier option for the drivers. We also have fully adjustable brake bias and diff as well, so the drivers can really fine-tune the way their cars feel. So those are the cars. We've introduced you to them. We've shown you what the points situation is. Before we dive into qualifying, let's take a closer look, shall we, at the Road Atlanta circuit we'll be racing on tonight.
Welcome everyone to the 4th round of the AGON by AOC MX5 Turbo Cup. We're here at Road Atlanta for the next track guide of the season. We're going to be on the medium tyres for this one, as I felt those were a bit better than the softs after the changes made. Into turn 1, carry good speed through the apex. Don't use this exit curb as that will spit you very far wide. The car gets very unsettled on the apex curb of turn 3, so you either want to nibble it or commit to taking a lot of curb. Now through the S's, it's all about taking the line of least resistance, trying to take it flat out. It might be trickier for those with ballast and dirty air. Up to turn 5, it's very easy to get the car unsettled here, so you take a nibble of the apex curb and a little bit on the exit. Don't take too much though, as that will slow your momentum if you go too far wide. Now down towards turn 6, fairly simple 90-degree right-hander, carry the speed through, and now we go into another 90-degree right-hander at turn 7. It's all important to get the exit out of here. You can use this exit curb, as that won't slow your momentum down. Now we're on the big run down into the final chicane. This is where hybrid deployment and slipstreams will be key in qualifying and the race. And I'm sure we will see plenty of moves lined up here into the final chicane, which we are approaching now. So we're going to be looking to brake very late for this one. Take a lot of the curb on the left-hand side here, and then try not to take any through the right-hand side to keep a smooth exit, and then keep it flat out down through the final couple of corners to the finish line, and that is the lap of Road Atlanta.
So we are into qualifying then for this 40-minute race, a longer race, but still track position is going to be significant, particularly through the early exchanges. So the fight for pole position is going to be a fierce one, as it has been all season long, really. We've had 3 qualifying sessions so far, 2 different drivers who have claimed pole position. Eric Axelsen continued his very impressive qualifying form that we saw in our previous championship for the touring cars by claiming pole the first 2 weeks, but it was Kyle Felvis a week ago who really, Jack, started to find his form. I think he already had a reversed grid race win at Laguna Seca, went and of course repeated that last week at Kota, but also got that first pole position, so I expect him to be one of several challengers for pole actually tonight.
Yeah, and that penalty we mentioned with Carl Felvis, I think that was while he was fighting for the race lead, wasn't he? And we sort of commented at the time that although he was very fast, he was right on Eric Axelsen, but as soon as he would get past him, he would struggle slightly. Maybe he would lose half a tenth or a tenth or so to Eric, and Eric could always try and get him back at the next 2 corners or something like that. But it's nice to see, if we cast our mind back to Laguna Seca, where Eric was just absolutely dominant. No one was touching him. We thought this championship was going to be very dull indeed. Carl's really stepped it up. You're absolutely right. And here now, he's a tenth off Eric Axelsen, but he's still got 7.5 minutes to go. The tyres have changed slightly. We'll mention that probably during qualifying, just to try and make sure that the softs and the mediums, there's a little bit more of a tactic to them. We'll try and mention that a little bit. But it's, yeah, brilliant to see Kyle right up there at the sharp end. And obviously Joel Lask as well. We were slightly surprised 2 weeks ago in the last 40-minute race how quick Joel Lask was. Well, he's very quick here today as well.
Yes, which is nice to see, because he wasn't a week ago, really, was he? Certainly in qualifying in race 1, he qualified 8th, finished 8th in race 1, and never really was a factor at the front of the field. Did manage to finish 2nd in the reversed grid race, but he led most of it and had a pretty handy gap actually over Kyle Felvis for a while, but Kyle was able to reel him in and find a way through towards the end of the race. So Joel looking to try and get back on form again tonight. So that seems to be exactly what he's doing. Axelsen at the moment fastest with a 28.7, a quarter of a tenth of a second clear of Joel Lask, and then this man who we ride on board with, Kyle Felvis, 3rd fastest right now, getting a nice little slipstream here from one of his teammates up the road as he makes his way through my favourite sequence of corners on the track, Jack. These downhill S's, so easy to get wrong, but when you get it right, it is really, really satisfying.
Yeah, I mentioned it at the top of the show. It was one of the circuits I was looking forward to most, and that first sector is really why. It's so punishing if you're going to go side by side. It's so punishing if you just run a little bit too much speed through them, and as I said, if you don't practice on the tyres, then you won't get that familiarisation. This is my least favourite corner though that we're seeing Carl Felvis go through. If for some reason I'm always expecting it not to be as tight as it is. I've driven it a couple of 100 times in the sim, and it just always surprises me. I always get on the power a little bit too soon and you run a little bit wide. It's more of a hairpin than a 90-degree right.
It is. There we go. There's the unmute button. Yes, that is a tricky corner, but a really, really important one for your lap time, as you said. That run over the top of the hill is vital. Carl Felvis getting a nice tow, as I've said, from, I'm guessing that's Nicky Taylor just in front of him. Nicky Taylor is just behind him on the times right now. Look how close it is. Those top 4 covered by just 0.2 of a second. A further 10th back to Elliot Dalton-Ayres, and Josh Martin then 0.3 further back. But we've got now 8 drivers within 0.8 of a second of the pole position time. Felvis does not improve, and so he will stay 3rd right now, just over 5.25 minutes of the session to go though, so there is time here should they wish to go into the pit lane and change tyres to go out there and try again, and that's something I think we may see them having to do. These soft tyres are not lasting as long now as they were right back at the start of the season, when really they were so durable that you could easily do 30 minutes on them with very, very little tyre drop-off. Elliot Dalton-Ayres not dropping off at all, though. He has just set the fastest time of the session, a 1:28.649. Still only just over half a tenth clear of Eric Axelsen, but that is the new time to beat. And Elliot Dalton-Ayres, who so far has the best qualifying effort of 3rd, that was back at the first round at Laguna Seca, which actually went on to become his one and only podium of the season so far. Looks as though he has found his rhythm here at Road Atlanta.
I have absolutely no idea where that lap time came from. It's absolutely stunning, wasn't it? I mean, he was green sector 1, green sector 3, but a purple sector 2, and clearly that purple sector 2 was the one that made all the difference. Now, Eric is slightly down on sector 1. He's got a quick sector 2, but the reason why I'm not entirely sure where Elliot's time came from is because I didn't see any cars ahead of him. Normally, you would see a pole position time because somebody is in the draft of someone else. So yeah, very, very impressive from Elliot there. It's going to be interesting to see if he can repeat those lap times over the next 40 minutes. As Alec Iyengar is on our screens now, he's in 12th place. He wasn't here a week ago, I don't believe. So it's nice to see Alec back with us as we're zooming forward to Eric Axelsson. I believe he's just set another time. It's not quicker, but I tell you what, he can't get much closer to Elliot Dalton-Ayres, can he?
No, not really. 6 thousandths of a second is all that separates our top two right now. The top three covered by less than a tenth, with Kyle Felvers only just outside of that 1/10 bracket. We're in for a very, very close night, I think, tonight, and we get extra time to enjoy it, of course, being a 40-minute race as opposed to just the 220s. So yeah, this looks really good. Kyle Felvers, though, is improving on this lap. So Kyle Felvers could be about to break into that 1/10 club. He is 4th fastest right now. There he goes through the two right-handers up at the top end of the circuit, turns 6 and 7. Then this flat-out kink to the left is turn 8, apparently. There's then magically another corner over the top of the hill, which the drivers will not notice because they're focusing, certainly Kyle Felvers is focusing anyway, on the rear bumper of his teammate, carrying as much speed over the top of the hill and back down the other side, staying to the right-hand side as you drop down the hill, and then pick your braking zone into 10A and then 10B, the left-right chicane. Nicely done through the first apex, almost cuts the corner a bit too much, but carries good speed up over the hill. This looks like a good lap here from Felvers, but is it good enough for pole, Jack?
Well, we'll have to wait and see. Slightly down in Sector 2. That might not make it a write-off of a lap. We'll have to wait and see. He goes pole position by a tenth, over a tenth of a second. That's the biggest margin we've seen for a pole position lap time so far. Purple Sector 1, purple Sector 3. Eric Axelsson was green in Sector 1, but his last two sectors weren't good enough to put him anywhere close to Kyle Felvers' time. Elliot Dalton-Ayres doesn't seem to be going particularly quickly on this lap, unfortunately, so he's going to have to do one more if he's got it in him. And, of course, like I said, like Andy pointed out, I should say, Kyle Felvers did have the assistance from his teammate just ahead of him, Nicky Taylor. Elliot Dalton-Ayres doesn't seem to have any sort of teammates around him or assistants, and particularly on that back section, Andy, that long back straight. That's really vital, isn't it?
Absolutely. This can vary from sim to sim, but usually you can gain a good half a second with a good toe over that hill if you get a good exit from the corner as well. Axelsson, you can see, as so often is the case though, going it alone really, not working with anybody, not trying to get the draft. But Eric is a patient man, and he knows that qualifying is only part of the story. You do get a championship point, remember, for qualifying on pole position, so from that perspective it's worth it, I suppose. But Eric knows that you score a lot more points for winning in the race, and that's something he's been very, very good at in recent memory as well. He drops down the hill, having had not a perfect run, I would have said, through turns 10A and 10B, but he crosses the line, and yeah, no improvement there. Stays in 3rd place, but does have time for one more lap right now. That's gone wrong. Kyle Felvers, I was about to say, couldn't be any closer to the back of Nicky Taylor, and he got too close because he spins Nicky Taylor into the wall. And that will be Nicky's session well and truly over. I was about to mention a minute or so ago, Jack, that Nicky has sort of been towing Kyle around all session. He's not sat behind Kyle at all that I've seen to try and get a lap in. He was willing to sacrifice his session for Kyle's benefit, and he did that quite literally there.
Yes, he did. And I was about to say, was it really worth it? Because he was 0.6 of a second off at the end of the lap. But to be fair, Kyle did put in a purple Sector 2. So he clearly thought that there was an opportunity to potentially improve on his own time. Sector 1 was 0.2 down though, so I'm not entirely sure whether that was really worth it. Eric Axelsson is still in 3rd, Joel Lask in 4th. Nicky Taylor rounds out the top 5, but like you said, it's a bit of a shame that we won't get to see Nicky Taylor's full potential and have those HFT teammates swap round, because as you mentioned, I think Kyle owes Nicky a bit of a favour there, doesn't he? He's very much given him a tow for the majority of this qualifying session. We haven't seen Nicky be in the tow, and as a consequence, he's in 5th place. As the checkered flag drops, Josh Martin stuck in 6th place, Nathan Blank in 7th, Andy Carroll in 8th, Ethan Hill in 9th, and Jens Verhoeven rounding out the top 10 for the time being. That could change. Eric Axelsson's not going to change it though, because he's in the pits. I believe Kyle Felvers has had an off as well in Sector 1, so he won't be improving. Joel Lask, Nicky Taylor, Josh Martin, Nathan Blank, none of them are going green in Sectors 1 or 2. So yeah, I think this is pretty much how the cookie crumbles for a lot of these drivers.
Indeed. So Kyle Felvers then is going to get his second pole position in a row. It would seem Josh Martin, one of the few drivers who may be able to beat him, but he's about 7/10 off his previous best at the end of Sector 2. Ethan Hill is a minute or so off by the looks of it. This has not been a very quick lap. He's gone out just for a quick sighting lap perhaps before he goes into the race later on, so he will drop down into the pit lane, which is a tricky pit lane entry, Jack, and that will be significant once we get into the race later on. You saw there from Ethan Hill just how easy it could be to get that wrong. Thankfully he gets in one piece. So pole position then for the second week in a row goes to Kyle Felvers. We'll chat to him on the other side of this break. Qualifying complete here at Road Atlanta then. The 40-minute pit stop race awaits for our drivers, and they'll be led to the green flag for the second time second week in a row by Kyle Felvers, who joins us now in the commentary box. Kyle, congratulations, a really good effort that. It was such a tight qualifying session. People were sort of trading pole position by a thousandth here, 100th there, and then you came in a tenth and a bit faster. Where did you find that time from?
That's a good question. I'm not sure, to be honest. I did not come into this race thinking I was going to be on pole because I've not done enough practice, really. And yeah, I expected Eric or Elliot or Joel to get it, to be honest.
Well, it looked like any one of them could have done, but you did manage to hook that lap up. A part of it, I'd imagine, is down to the teamwork that we saw between you and Nicky. Nicky really is helping you as much as he can at the moment, and around here with the effect of the slipstream in qualifying, that was really important.
Yeah, I mean, he was also on a good lap, which helped. It meant he had no problem with towing me round. His reaction once I got that quickest lap, though, was quite funny because he didn't like it that he's just towed me to the pole lap. But it's a 40-minute race, so there's a lot that can happen.
Yes. Now, let's talk about that then, because I know you have not always been a big fan of the 40-minute races, but, you got on the podium last time at Road America. You've clearly got decent pace here, but since Road America, they've tweaked the tyre compounds ever so slightly. How does that change your game plan going into this one?
I mean, it's been a struggle because we've all been trying to figure out what tyres we're going to be on. They've changed a few times this week, and also the track changing as well. We had a track mod change, so it's the same track, just a different version. So we all had to get used to that while trying to get all tyres and everything figured out. So it's been difficult, but we'll see.
Probably fair to say that this place is harder on the tyres anyway than Road America was, where we had our last 40-minute pit stop race. That first sector in particular, you're really sliding the car a lot through there, but it looks like good fun.
Yeah, love a rear-wheel drive car. Love drifting, as many people will know. But yeah, it is good fun, especially when you're in practice and you're just sending it round corners. It is a good laugh to drift around some of them.
Well, we're certainly going to enjoy watching you. Happy birthday in advance as well. We had a message in the chat reminding us that it is your last start here at the VRRC as a 14-year-old. So you're catching up to us slowly, Carl, and it would be nice if you could get yourself an early birthday present with a win here tonight.
Yeah, it would be good. Thank you for the happy birthday. But yeah, it would be good.
Good stuff. We'll let you go and finish off your preparation then. Carl Felvis on pole position for our 40-minute pit stop race here at Road Atlanta. And Jack, as always, it always fascinates me chatting to Kyle because we often get a bit of an insight into what he's really thinking, if you're willing to read between the lines. And I don't think he was expecting to be as competitive as he was in that qualifying session, but this really should be the kind of place that suits him. It is a fast-flowing circuit. You've got to be able to slide the car around. That is Kyle Felvis' country, if ever I heard of it.
Absolutely, yeah, and I'm not entirely surprised he's as competitive. He mentioned a couple of times that he's having to get used to the tyres, having to get used to the track mod and all that sort of thing. But frankly, everybody's in the same boat. Everybody's had the same amount of time. So if it's changed a couple of times during this week, then that means that everybody else has only had the same amount of practice sort of thing. And so it is going to be interesting to see if he can make it last, what the tyre choices are going to be as well, whether it's going to be medium, whether somebody's going to try and go softs early and then maybe change to the mediums in the second half of the race. Remember, you don't have to change. You don't have to do your pit stop in a 5-minute window. It's literally after you've completed the first lap and before you go on to your last lap. So it could be 5 minutes into the race. It could be 35 minutes into the race. There's plenty of options for you. So I think a lot of people are going to have to figure this out on the fly.
Yes, you have to change tyres during that pit stop, but there's no rule that says you have to use more than one compound. So if you want to use softs and then change to another set of softs or mediums to mediums, that's absolutely fine, but you're equally entitled to change compounds out of that pit stop. And that, for me, is probably, I haven't driven the car and I haven't done any testing, so this is a plan that is coming from a very uneducated perspective, but I would be tempted, from what I've heard, to start on the mediums, see how long you can make them last, and maybe go on to the softs at the end, because I think there is too much uncertainty around how long those softs are going to last for many of them to go for it at the start. But if they are that bit grippier now than they used to be, then that is highly likely to yield better grip and therefore better speed at the start of the race. So we shall see, but I think we might see a bit more of a split of the strategy here. And that, Jack, is exactly what we wanted to do. That's why they've been playing around with the tyre compounds over the last week or so.
Yeah, from what I've heard, I don't think the softs are particularly that much quicker than they used to be. They just they come into their own a little bit quicker and they fall off a cliff a little bit quicker. So some drivers will really enjoy and sort of use that to their advantage. Like Axelson, he's very smooth. I imagine he would probably quite enjoy using the softs a little bit more than some of the drivers. But we don't really know is the answer, do we? We can speculate all we want, but we're going to have to wait until the race starts, which isn't that far away.
Indeed, lights about to come on then. Carl Felvis on the right, Elliot Dalton-Ayres, the red and black car on the left, with Eric Axelson, the championship leader by 8 points coming into this race, starting third on the grid. 40 minutes on the clock, the Road Atlanta circuit ahead of them, and the lights go out. We're away in racing, and Axelson makes a really good start there from the outside of row number 2. He might be able to challenge for the race lead into turn number 1. He is challenging around the outside of Carl Felvis. He's cleared him already. It's another demon start for Axelson. He leads them through turn 1. Felvis second, Dalton-Ayres third, Josh Martin there around the outside of Joel Lask as they go through the first corner, with the Joel Lask hanging on to that 4th spot. But Jack, that is exactly what we saw from Axelson a couple of weeks ago at Road America. That time he was starting on pole position. He retained the lead by almost a second into the first corner. This time, though, he goes from 3rd to 1st. He is very good at getting this MX5 off the line.
He's unflappable, isn't he? It doesn't matter whether he's on pole position, whether he's in 3rd, whether he's in 2nd. He's going to get a decent launch, and he's going to gain some places off of it. Carl Felvis trying to go around the outside. He wants that track position back as soon as possible. Eric gives him enough room, but is only the width of an MX5, and that forces Carl Felvis to go a little bit wide through probably the most important corner on the entire circuit. Elliot Dalton-Ayres cuts in front of him to take that 2nd place away, as Joel Lask is in the slipstream as well, looking very interested in trying to take advantage of probably not only 1 but 2 positions, as Eric Axelson leads the way. Elliot Dalton-Ayres going slightly defensive. Is that arguable to say? He's going very defensive now, Andy.
He is indeed, and here comes Joel Lask as well, trying to join in the front. Up the inside goes Dalton-Ayres, almost turns defence into attack. There's contact with Felvis, who does well to hang on to that, but this is all playing into the hands of Eric Axelson, who is on the hard tyres. The top 3 cars at the moment are all on different compound tyres. Axelson's on hards, Felvis on softs, and Dalton-Ayres on the mediums. Now, Axelson's the only one who has gone for those hard tyres. That, Jack, makes his start particularly impressive, and the fact that he's hanging on to the lead even more so.
Yeah, I think if we do end up having a chat to Eric Axelson again at the end of this one, we're going to have to ask him to explain again how on earth he gets an MX5 off the start, because that was simply incredible if he is on those hard tyres. That's very, very impressive. As you can see at the top of your screen, the pit window opens from the 36th minute and 52nd second. So basically, at the end of this lap, they can come into the pit. Elliot Dalton is right on the back bumper of Carl Felvis yet again. Joel Lask is falling down the order somewhat, isn't he? He's ended up in the 6th position with Josh Martin and Nicky Taylor getting past him. Eric Axelson is not going to have it all his own way. In fact, it looked like there was a little bit of a touch up the backside there from Carl Felvis. I think, is this Carl Felvis feeling a little bit of pressure? He did very well to hold on to his position and overtake Elliot Daltonez through 10A and 10B. But is there going to be a potential for just... He's attacking Eric Axelson more than he'd like because he doesn't want to be overtaken by Elliot Daltonez. As Elliot Daltonez gets boxed in and thrown into the pit wall as he comes back across the track. Hopefully he doesn't make any contact with anybody. He doesn't, but Elliot Daltonez, after what was a brilliant qualifying session, ends up out of the race early, and Carl Felvis has got into the lead.
Yes, he has. That was all triggered by a bit of a block from Axelson. Axelson was covering from Felvis. Then he saw that Dalton Ayres was coming, so moved in front of him. And I think as Elliot's tried to lift or avoid running into the back of him, there's been a bit of door banging with Felvis, and that's what sent him off the road. It was certainly Felvis who he had contact with, but I'm not really convinced anyone was at fault. I'm sure that will be looked at after the race, but it does take Dalton Ayres out of contention. Leaders then through the top of the S's for the 3rd time. Felvis leads, Axelson 2nd, Nicky Taylor 3rd, Josh Martin 4th, Joel Lask slipping back a bit here into 5th position. He's on the mediums, but so too is Nicky Taylor, who has got past him in the early stages. Ethan Hill, Jens Verhoeven, Nathan Blank, Andy Carroll and Alec Iyengar round out the top 10, but that little bit of contact down at the back straight has just now opened up a bit of real estate between the top 2 and the chasing pack behind.
Yeah, but if Kota was anything to go by, we know that that's going to be swallowed up as these two start fighting with each other. This time round, though, it's Carl Felvis leading Eric Axelson. We've already mentioned once that they're on different tyre compounds. Eric probably won't be too worried about this. As long as Carl Felvis doesn't really get too far down the road, he'll be fairly happy with his hard tyres. He'll be able to go longer than Kyle, and Kyle will have the decision to make earlier than Eric about which tyre he switches onto. Obviously, Eric will have a lot of intel by how early Carl feels like he needs to go into the pit. So, yeah, he's using everybody else as a bit of a guinea pig here, is Axelson. And I'm all here for it. Smart driving by him. As Josh Martin was just overtaken by Joel Lask, who's latched himself, onto the back of Nicky Taylor.
He has. Joel Lask looks quick, and you're right about those gaps coming down. The leader does a 29.2, 29.8 for Axelson 2nd, and a 29.6 for Taylor. So Taylor isn't quite as quick as Felvis, but he is quicker than Axelson. Again, a difference there at tyres, quite a big one as well. Taylor's on the softest compound, and Axelson on the hardest. On board here with Joel Lask, who's on the medium tyres. This is exactly what we wanted from these 40-minute races. A bit of variation on tyre strategy, and we've really got it at the front of the field. Softs, hard, softs, mediums, softs across the top 6, and you're on board with Joel Lask, who is trying just to hang on to some of these soft-tyred cars ahead until his medium tyres perhaps come on stronger in the middle part of the stint. We're already 5.5 minutes nearly into this race, and Joel Lask now about to start applying the pressure to Nicky Taylor, who, Jack, is about to do exactly the same thing to Axelson. These gaps are really coming down.
They are indeed, but yeah, Carl doing a good job so far. Unfortunately, and we do apologise, the hybrid system is in use for the drivers, but we can't quite see what everybody's doing. I'm going to assume Joel Lask is on the hybrid because he's just absolutely streaked past Eric Axelson, and I believe he's side by side with Nicky Taylor. Yeah, they've both gotten past Eric Axelson, and up the inside into 10A, there's a little bit of contact by Joel Lask on Nicky Taylor. Nicky Taylor gets scared out of it through 10B, and Joel Lask takes 2nd place.
Good news for Carl Felvis. You can see the gap that he's pulled out. Axelson comes back up the inside of Nicky now through the final corner. It's tough to run side by side through there, but Axelson, a clean driver as always, leaves plenty of space for Nicky on the outside, to his detriment though, because that means that he is slower off the corner, and so Josh Martin closes in on the two of them. Josh Martin being urged on in the chat to do some overtaking. Oh, no. Well, he's going to, because Axelson in the wall. The championship leader is in the wall coming out of turn number 1. Through goes Taylor, through goes Martin, through goes everybody, because Axelson could be out of the race.
That's absolutely good. He has got back going with those hard tyres. He's behind Alok Iyengar now. He's just going to have so much time to make up now. It's going to be nearly impossible for him to win this race, but he's just going to have to try and do some damage limitation. And, well, you do get to drop rounds here, but remember, this one race, like Andy was saying earlier, is worth double the amount of points as a normal sprint race. And unlike a normal sprint evening, you don't get a second chance, as Josh Martin is about to do some overtaking because Nicky Taylor runs very wide on the worst corner on the track that you want to run wide on, because he's absolutely ruined his run. He's all the way back down to 8th place. Andy Carroll, Nathan Blank, Jens Verhoeven, and Ethan Hill have all followed Josh Martin through.
He's waiting for Axelson. That's definitely what he's doing. I don't know if he was originally going to do that or whether he made the mistake and decided to make something good of it, but he has now backed off, and I think we'll try and drop him behind Eric. Yeah. That ain't going to get him that far, though, because Axelson lost a lot of places there. It might lessen the punishment, but if it was his fault, we don't know whether it was, of course. We didn't see the incident, but if it was Nicky's fault, then I don't think that's necessarily going to save his bacon completely. Right, Joel Lask has caught Kyle Felvers. That's interesting for a couple of reasons, Jack, because a week ago, there's no way Joel Lask could have caught Kyle Felvers. In fact, it was Kyle doing the catching and Joel being caught. It's also interesting because it tells me that his tyres are stronger at this phase of the race. Remember, Lask's on the mediums, Felvers on the softs. Is this the sign that maybe the softs are going off and the mediums are coming into their own?
Yeah, well, Joel Lask has just gone purple through Sector 1, and that is the sector, I would say, Andy, that you're going to see the biggest difference when the softs start to drop off, and it was 0.2 of a second between Kyle and Joel, as Eric Axelson is in the pits, I'm guessing, with damage to his car, and, well, Nicky Taylor, he tried to do the right thing, well, supposedly one of the right things, in dropping back behind Eric, but it's a bit of a moot point as Eric comes into the pit. So Nicky Taylor's lost all that time. A bit of an admission of guilt as well, really, if you do that. And it hasn't really worked out for him, as Joel Lask is on the hybrid, I imagine, and is absolutely pulling clear of Kyle Felvers with those tyres. Andy, I think you're absolutely right, are slightly stronger at this stage in the race. You have every opportunity at outbraking Kyle Felvers, even though Kyle will have the inside line through 10A. Is he going to run a little bit quick? No, Kyle actually nails that one, doesn't he? But Lask with a really nice exit of 10B. Is he going to look at the inside through the final corner? No, not quite, but Kyle Felvers will be feeling the pressure now. When does he come into the pits? We've only had nearly 10 minutes, well, 9 minutes of this race so far, and those softs have already started to deteriorate.
Well, this is the problem with starting on the softs. You sort of limit yourself then. If you pit early, you have to go for one of the harder compounds for your second stint, which you might not want to do. Lask, though, gets it all wrong through the first corner, and that just allows Felvers to pull out a few extra tenths of a second. Whilst this calms down for a second, just a quick point on Axelson. He's pitted. We've seen people in the past have an accident and then pit and not be allowed to rejoin the race. That's if you fast track back to the pit lane by pressing a button on your wheel or your keyboard. Axelson, as we saw, drove back to the pit lane, so he is entitled to continue on in the race. Ethan Hill there on the attack, trying to find a way past Nathan Blank, who is having a really good run here. Nathan Blank has not necessarily been a regular at the front of the field, it must be said. He did the first round at Laguna Seca, hasn't raced with us since, but he only scraped into the top 10 there. But Nathan running well inside the top half dozen now.
He's doing very well, isn't he? And in fact, now he's right on the back of Ethan Hill, who has just overtaken him. But there's every opportunity that he's going to have a nice slipstream on Ethan and he'll be able to attack back at him. Yes, the reason why I was so excited at Eric going into the pit lane, a lot of people might just think, well, everybody's going to go into the pit lane at some point today. The pit lane is open, so why not? Well, it's because Eric Axelson, he was on the hard tyres. That definitely wasn't a planned pit stop. He's come back out, and I think, is he on the mediums? My screen is a little bit pixelated. I don't know if Eric Axelson's on the mediums or the hards. We'll have to wait until my screen stops pixelating and then we'll be able to find out. But you're absolutely right. Nathan Blank, he's been away, I think, for a week or two as well. So he's doing very strong here in the MX5, battling hard with the top 5.
You're right, Eric is on the medium tyre now, so he has changed to that probably a bit earlier than he wanted. I wouldn't have been surprised if he tried to change onto the softs, do a long first stint and then change onto the softs, but as you said, had to pit to get the repair work done, and that sort of forced his hand a little bit. Ethan Hill here defending busily from Nathan Blank, who's in his slipstream heading down through the S's. Really just single file through here. There's no easy way to overtake unless the car ahead makes a mistake. Really, the best place to pass is at the end of the back straight, and that starts with a good run through these next two corners, although actually a really good exit from the S's there has maybe given Nathan Blank the place. Yes, it has. He sweeps around the outside of Ethan Hill, and he made that look very easy. And look, he's immediately onto the tail of Jens Verhoeven as he now heads onto that back straight and into the best of the overtaking opportunities. So Nathan Blank tucked right up behind the yellow number 85 car. There he goes, Nathan in the wheel tracks of Jens Verhoeven. He's also having one of his best showings of the season so far. And as you ride on board with Nathan, you can see that gap start to come down with the slipstream. I suspect that Verhoeven was on the hybrid there to try and negate some of that slipstream effect, but it's not going to work because Blank mirror signal maneuver, dives up the inside line, just about gets it stopped for 10A, and as long as he's not too slow off 10B, which he's not, positions the car cleverly, he's into 4th place.
Yep, it's as textbook as you can get from an overtake around Road Atlanta, isn't it? It's from Nathan Blank, and he's managing to hold on for it for the time being, but Jens Verhoeven's looking very interested in trying to have a very quick reply into turn number 1. Nathan Blank, well, I think the door was already open. He's just extended it to try and get a nice sweeping run into Sector 1. Now, you said you want to go single file through here, Andy. I don't think they're listening, are they? And that's the reason why, as Nathan Blank, unfortunately, well, to be fair, it was going to be a right-hand apex. You do fly over the curb on the right-hand side as well. It was arguably Nathan Blank's corner, but there was not enough room for both of those drivers. And, well, unfortunately, Nathan Blank was the driver who ended up falling off worse. Joel Lask right behind Carl Felvis. Let's try and scoot away from that incident and maybe focus on potential race lead change.
Indeed so. I know I sounded like a bit of a know-it-all when I said you shouldn't go side-by-side through it. I must stress, I learnt that the hard way myself. It is not an easy thing to do, so could sort of see that one coming. Leaders then onto the back straight. Joel Lask in the wheel tracks of Carl Felvis. He's tried this once before, dropped back after that mistake at turn 1, and hasn't ever really got close enough again, has he? So are his medium tyres now starting to fade? If they were, you'd still expect him to have some advantage over Carl Felvis, or is he maybe just managing this situation? They're pulling away from everybody else quite rapidly, aren't they? 6.5 seconds now, back to Josh Martin in 3rd. So perhaps Joel Lask playing the long game here. He knows that Axelson's had trouble. He knows that Nicky Taylor has had trouble. Dalton Ayres has had trouble as well. So they're all kind of out of it now. So Lask, in a way, is only really racing Felvis if he feels that he's going to have a tyre advantage through this stint that might then allow him to do something different in the second stint. Maybe he doesn't have to overtake Felvis on the track.
No, and I was just looking at the last lap times as well. Realistically, I don't know how much hybrid they were using in the previous lap, because that does mask some of the pain of the tyres potentially when it comes to overall lap times. But Carl Felvis was quite quick. He went green Sector 1 and Sector 2, and his last lap time was about 10th quicker than Joel Lask as well. So his tyre isn't completely dead yet. I think maybe he just made a couple of mistakes earlier on. But you're absolutely right. I don't think Joel Lask is really that bothered in sitting where he is. He's using the slipstream instead of the hybrid. He's holding on to his tyres. He's in a good opportunity. That's not how you hold on to your tyres, but it is how you get the car rotated nice and quickly by Joel Lask. Maybe he's thinking a little bit more aggressive this time round. Maybe he's forced into thinking a little bit more aggressive because of that oversteer moment.
I suspect you might be right there. Here he comes, though, in the slipstream. He's going to feint to the right, but then eventually dives to the left. That is the line that he wanted, because it's the inside line for the braking zone at 10A. He briefly gets his nose in front, but can he complete the move this time? Yes, I think he can. He just drifts across the nose of Kyle Felvis on corner entry, and finally, Joel Lask is into the lead the race. He led an awful lot of the second race a week ago at Circuit of the Americas before Felvis caught and passed him, and now it's sort of the opposite. He looks the quicker of the two, and having gone through, he might now be able to escape. Look at that lap. It was over a second quicker than Kyle Felvis. I know he had the slipstream, which helped that, but Joel Lask now out in front and already starting to build a little bit of a gap. So Lask to the lead then, Felvis second, Martin third, Carroll fourth, Ethan Hill 5th and Jens Verhoeven in 6th. Now, I know we've had a couple of them diving for the pit lane for unscheduled pit stops, but we are now getting into that part of the race, Jack, where I wouldn't be surprised to see some people coming in. In particular, Kyle Felvis, because he's lost the lead. His tyres clearly are past their best. If he can't hang on to Joel Lask, is it worth him trying to come in early and get the undercut?
I wouldn't be surprised, because to be honest, neither Joel Lask nor Carl Felvis are actually the quickest drivers out there. Elliot Dalton Ayres is just putting the fastest lap, but that's only because Eric Axelsson hasn't yet crossed the line. He's purple sector 1, purple sector 2, purple sector 3, and at the bottom right hand side of your screen, a 127.8 is a full second quicker than what Joel Lask and Carl Felvers are currently doing. And I know Eric Axelson is all the way down in 12th, and there's a high likelihood he won't catch up to any of these drivers now, because not only did he come into the pits for tyres, he came into the pits for repairs on his car, and so he was in there for a lot longer than he would like to. But it just goes to show that if you do change the tyres, there is a lot to be had out of them, and especially if you use and abuse the hybrid. And remember, if we're talking about fastest laps and we're talking about doubling up the points, normally a fastest lap is 3 points. Well, we've doubled it up for this particular race, so it's actually worth 6. Eric Axelson is definitely in damage limitation mode.
But that's big. I mean, 6 points is a good point. Well, okay, it becomes his drop score, I suppose, at this stage. But if he were to have another disastrous night, then at least he's got more in the bank from this evening. So, yeah, that's good thinking there. And, of course, he may still have the pace to get himself well up inside the top 10, because other people are having issues of their own and may well lose time. There's still 23 minutes to go. We know Axelson's one of the quickest cars on the track. Jens Verhoeven here has dropped down a few places over the last few laps. He's behind Ethan Hill now. The ongoing fight for 5th position. Jens Verhoeven tried to get to the inside of him then through the first corner, and it didn't work. The man that they're both chasing and actually being dropped by slightly is Andy Carroll. I don't think we've really mentioned Andy Carroll all race long, but he always seems to find his way to the front in these longer races, doesn't he? He's in 4th place now, and he's one of the quicker cars on track right now.
Survival of the fittest. It's he's flown right under the radar as Andy Carroll for this particular event, and but fair play too. Sometimes that's the best way to go, isn't it? It's like quite often when we have a runaway leader in a race, you don't actually mention them right until the end because they're just quietly going about their business, and that's exactly what Andy Carroll has done here. He's ahead of Ethan Hill, Jens Verhoeven, but like you mentioned, he's actually pulling away from both of these drivers ever so slightly. I say ever so slightly actually. He was a good 0.7 of a second quicker on that last lap than Ethan Hill, and I know Ethan Hill is busy fighting with Jens Verhoeven, but yeah, Carroll is absolutely flying. What is his lap times compared to Josh Martin up ahead of him on that previous lap? Pretty much identical, only 1,000th of a second between himself and the currently bottom step of the podium. Andy Carroll is flying.
He really is, and well, yeah, could catch Josh Martin perhaps before the end of this stint, maybe even before the end of the race itself. Out of the final corner they go. Carroll went across the start-finish line, and yeah, only a 10th quicker than them that time, but that could start to change because they're definitely battling for 5th position here. Ethan Hill just ahead of Jens Verhoeven, but Jens Verhoeven, try as he might, just can't quite get that overlap at the right part of the track. He's quick, but not necessarily in the bits of the track where you do lots of overtaking. This first sector is where Verhoeven is strong. Remember, they're both on the soft tyres as well, so there's no difference in tyre compound here. That brings me on to an interesting point, though. Well, I think it's interesting anyway. All of these drivers on the soft tyres, Jack, and we kind of expected them all to struggle with tyre wear. None of them have yet pitted, so the soft tyres may be dropping off a little bit, but maybe not as much as people expected.
Yeah, it's not exactly a cliff, therefore. Oh, Jens Verhoeven looking up the inside of a corner. That potentially not advisable. He does force Ethan Hill off wide, though, and Jens Verhoeven does get that. But to be honest, I think the only reason why there wasn't contact there was because Ethan Hill did jump out of the way of the oncoming yellow and black car who's inside. Yeah, I don't think it's a cliff that these soft tyres have fallen off. It's more like a gentle incline at this rate. So, yeah, they're working for them. And we did say it was a bit of an experiment into the unknown, and clearly a lot of people are enjoying that. However, Carl Felvers has just come into the pit lane. I believe one of the first drivers who've actually committed to the scheduled soft tyre pit stop. What's he going to come out on? He's got to catch Joel Lask now, obviously. Joel Lask was on those medium tyres. He'll be running a little bit longer, naturally, as he parks up behind the number 50. Oh, yeah, that's our broadcast car, isn't it? Of course. So I was very confused on who the number 50 was. That triggers a whole host of other drivers coming to the pits. It might be the fact that we're halfway through this race rather than the fact that Kyle has decided to do it. But, you know, I like to think of Kyle as a bit of a trendsetter.
They don't like to overcomplicate things here, do they, at the VRRC? We've got to halfway and everyone started to pit.
Yes.
I think that was just the easiest way to cut this race up, wasn't it? Felvers already on his way, though, by the time the others come to a standstill. Out of the pit lane he comes now. Where is he in relation to Eric Axelson? Well, Axelson just went across the line. Remember, he has made his mandatory pit stop.
Yeah.
It wasn't when he wanted to make it, but he has made it, and he is within 10 seconds of Felvers. Now, like we said, I don't think he's going to win the race. He might not even make it onto the podium, but 10 seconds behind Felvers would put him somewhere around the 5th place battle, I reckon. So there are still some good points on offer here.
Well, considering he not only had to recover from the crash, which would have probably lost him a good 10 seconds on its own, but then had to repair the car in the pit lane. I'm not sure how long that took, but it's going to be, a substantial amount of time. He has caught up a massive amount of time now, hasn't he? And we did see his fastest lap was a good second quicker than everybody else. So even if he maybe only set 1 or 2 of those laps that are even close to his fastest lap with using the hybrid and everything, he's done a really good job at catching up with the rest of the field, that's for sure. Joel Lask has jumped into the pits. Now, he was on the medium tyre, so the medium, in his eyes, the medium and the soft, there's absolutely no difference between them. I'm wondering if he's going to come out on the softs.
I don't know. I think the mediums gave him an advantage in the middle part of the stint. I think the drop-off by the end of the stint was about the same. I think the softs just got there sooner, if that makes sense, and the mediums perhaps hung on through the second 10 minutes, maybe, of the stint a little bit more. But it certainly has spiced things up, this, hasn't it? Nathan Blank is in as well. We're following Eric Axelson. He has got a car just ahead of him, which is a lapped car, I believe, isn't he? Yeah, that's John Jones, who he's about to put a lap on. But where is Axelson in relation to some of those who have just pitted? Well, he might well. He's not quite going to get ahead of Nathan Blank, but he's not going to be that far behind. You can see Nathan actually coming out of the pit lane just ahead. There is Lask. He's out of the pits now. He is behind Kyle Felbus by about 5.2 seconds. That's No, hang on. That's a big gap, isn't he? He was ahead of Felbus. So what's happened there, Jack?
I was hoping, as the more experienced commentator, Andy, you would be able to tell me. Absolutely no idea, to be honest. That is a massive margin, isn't it? I can't believe that Joel Lask had a big enough off to for that to be the case. Maybe he was in the pit lane for a longer amount of time. Unfortunately, our timing system doesn't give us the amount of time that they were actually stationary or triggering the pit lane sensors or anything like that. It's Lewis Edwards, who's doing our broadcast, does a brilliant job as per usual. He's put in the Discord that potentially it was a difference in pit entry, so maybe he was a bit slow on pit entry, but I can't believe that was 6 seconds. Refueling amount, or that he missed his pit box. I don't believe we actually saw him park the car, but he might have parked it slightly wrong. You do have to be very precise in these simulators about where you park the car. Even though you go through everybody else, you do have to be specific about where you park it before they actually start acting on your car.
Yeah, I've never done a pit stop race on a Seto course, something I probably shouldn't admit really whilst commentating on one, but I have done many on ACC, and I know that on ACC it is very, very finicky with how accurately you have to park the car, and if you don't park it right, it can lose you 5 or 6 seconds very easily. So my money is on that. I think he missed his pit box slightly, didn't park it quite right, and had to do a bit of rejigging. He has come out though on the medium tyres, so he does clearly think the medium tyre is the one to have. If he can recreate the pace that he had on the mediums first stint compared to Felbus on the softs, he should be able to catch him again, just about. But it's going to be a really close run thing towards the end. Remember that still Josh Martin, Andy Carroll, Alec Iyengar, they haven't yet pitted. Elliot Dalton-Ayres, I think I'm right in saying, hasn't pitted yet either, has he? I know that he had that off earlier on, but I don't actually think he came into the pit lane after that, so he still owes us a stop. So Kyle Felbus in 5th position, the first of those to have made the pit stop right now, should come out of all of this as the race leader. But those that did start on the mediums now seemingly able to go quite a long way. As I say that, Josh Martin comes in, and this is significant, Jack, because he was also up there within that podium fight.
He was, and to be honest, I think it's significant for Eric Axelson because, in my opinion, Eric will be the closest driver to Josh now. He was never going to be able to catch up to potentially the top two. Well, obviously the top two, but Josh was around that podium fight. Andy Carroll was in 4th place as well, wasn't he? Jens Verhoeven, those sort of areas, I think, is where Eric Axelson is now going to fit and slot nicely into. So we're going to have to keep an eye on where Eric exactly is. In fact, I can see him on the track map. This is Nicky Taylor, where is Axelson's just about to go across the start-finish line, and Josh Martin is still in the pit lane as he's just coming out now, isn't he? So this is going to be very, very close. There is Josh Martin, and the driver just behind him is Nathan Blank. Then it'll be Eric Axelson. So Josh Martin stays ahead of Nathan Blank, but only just.
He does. Where did Taylor lose all this time then? Because Nicky Taylor was up there, not a million miles away from it. It was sort of Martin, Blank, and Taylor, and then kind of Verhoeven as well, who were fighting for that podium place, wasn't it? But they've really lost time. Eric Axelson, meanwhile, right on the tail of Nathan Blank, so he keeps on gaining places here, even though he's now at a tyre disadvantage, but been on these tyres for, 15 minutes or so? Maybe longer, actually. I think it was before the 10-minute mark that he had his off. And, Eric Axelson then moves up ahead of Nathan Blank. That puts him into 6th place. That should become 4th, though, really, once Andy Carroll and Elliot Dalton-Ayres pit. Those two yet to stop. That doesn't really surprise me, though, Jack, because we've seen Andy Carroll, in particular, do this so many times before. Go for the different strategy, stretch that opening stint, come out on the softs at the end, and try and gain some places. And it looks like that's what he's trying to do again here tonight.
Yeah, he's trying it, that's for sure. His last lap was a 129.9, and just to put that in sort of perspective, it's probably about a second off what is some of the front-running fast times, even the front-running sort of times they did just before they pit stop. So Andy Carroll, yeah, he has to do something different if he's going to try and stand out. What I am quite impressed with, though, is that Andy Carroll's last lap, a 129.9, was only about half a second slower than his overall best lap, which is 129.4. So he's keeping his tyres in that window rather effectively.
And I suspect he probably could have gone quicker than that personal best lap, but he chose not to. He's managed the tyres, saved the tyres at the start of the race. We know the medium tyre is capable of a faster lap time than that. We've seen it from other drivers, but those drivers have had to pit. So Andy Carroll playing the long game, doing this differently to everybody else, and this is why, I don't care what anyone else says, this is why I like these 40-minute races, especially the way that we've got these tyre compounds now, because it keeps us and the drivers guessing right the way through. Ethan Hill, finally, in fact, no, he's already been in, hasn't he? So Ethan Hill having some sort of a problem. I don't know whether he's been off the track or whether he's just run out of tyres, but he's into the pit lane anyway, and this looks like a reasonably lengthy stop. Eric Axelsen, meanwhile, charging on, and Jackie's within a second now of Josh Martin. Axelsen is on a mission.
He is absolutely flying, and as I said earlier, to achieve his fastest lap, which was astonishingly quick, he will have absolutely used and abused that hybrid system. So the fact that he's now catching up to drivers that have probably been saving it through the race. I mean, Eric probably used it 3 times in that fastest lap, probably one going into the double right-hander, one coming out of the double right-hander, and then a credit across the start-finish line. So he's, I imagine, got slightly less than everybody else, but the fact that he's even catching up at 28.9, half a second quicker than Josh Martin with a 29.5. So he's absolutely flying, is Eric, and I'm looking forward to seeing how his progress continues in the last 12 minutes. It's really not that long to go. These endurance races really do fly by.
Indeed they do, possibly because they're not that long, really. This, remember, is for 3rd place, remember, isn't it? So if essentially, once Carroll and Dalton-Ayres pit, this would be for a podium. I mean, what were the odds on Axelsen making the podium when he was in the wall coming out of turn 1 10 minutes into the race? This has been the drive of a champion, and if he does win this championship, I'm not giving it to him just yet, far from it, but if he does win it, then I think we'll all look back at this race as perhaps the night on which he did it, because this could so easily have been a terrible result, very low points haul. He'd have used up his drop score, essentially, really early in the season. And as it is, he's actually going to come out of this one with just as many points as he did last week, probably, if he survives these final 11 minutes without another tangle, without his tyres suddenly falling off a cliff, and if he can find the way past Josh Martin. I'm sort of giving him this podium, but we know that Josh Martin ain't always an easy person to pass.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I'm just looking, if he does finish in 3rd place, just trying to very quickly figure it out in my head, because he's got the fastest lap, I believe he'll end up with 46 points, because it's 20 points for a 3rd place. We obviously double that. It's 3 points for a fastest lap. We obviously double that. So with 46 points, that means he's outscoring his previous result around Cotter, as I like to call it, Cota, which was only 41 points. So yeah, he's doing extremely well for himself. And yeah, we can't really praise him highly enough. I suppose if you did watch him at Laguna Seca, you'd probably say, well, I'm surprised he's not winning it, actually, after being in the wall. But over the previous rounds, everybody else has stepped up their game. I think Eric Axelsen has just raised the bar again.
The writing clearly is on the wall here for
Yes.
Josh, because even his biggest fan in the YouTube chat has sort of given this 3rd place to Eric Axelsen. He's not got the move made yet, and despite the fact he's coasted up behind Josh, hasn't really looked likely to make the move. And look at that, little bit of a slide there, just as he went through the sort of mid-speed right-hander at turn 6. That sort of tells me, another one there on the exit of turn 7, tells me that maybe Eric's rear tyres are slightly past their best, and he's still got another 10 minutes to go. Remember, he's asking a lot of these medium tyres. He's asking them to do the better part of half an hour, and those who have done half an hour on the medium tyres, I mean, look at Andy Carroll, 1 minute 20.1 he just did. Remember, he still hasn't made a pit stop, so we know these tyres are not going to have that much pace left in them in another 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes time. Axelson, if he's going to make this move, really needs to try and make it quickly before that tyre really does start to fall away on him.
Yeah, he's had 14 laps so far on the medium tyres. Now, just obviously, that was just finishing his 50th lap actually. Whereas Josh Martin has only had 4 laps on on the medium tyres. So, to be honest, the fact that Josh isn't pulling away, he'll probably be slightly worried, to be honest, because he'll know that Eric was in the pits and that he was charging through. He's doing a good job so far, but he's just hoping and praying that the degradation catches up with Eric at some point during the next 9 minutes. Having a look elsewhere, Andy Carroll's still out. Elliot Dalton Ayres has been out, and he's been out for 18 laps actually. He's only done 20 laps in total. So he's making his tyres last an awful long way, which is why we're pretty much giving Carl Felvis that provisional race lead, as Jens Verhoeven seems to have parked up on the left-hand side. I'm not entirely sure why. Maybe it looks like a potential hardware failure. The only reason why I say that is because the steering wheel looks very straight and they're not revving at all.
Yes, that is interesting. It certainly has all the hallmarks of a hardware failure, doesn't it? I've got a question on Elliot Dalton Ayres. I'll get to that in a moment, though, because we'll focus on a couple of things first. Race leader is in. Andy Carroll has finally come in with 8 minutes to go. And also this ongoing fight between Josh Martin and Eric Axelson. Axelson, interestingly, choosing to push Josh Martin there, not choosing to find a way or try and find a way past. So Axelson perhaps just trying to work with Martin until the end of the race, save those tyres by sitting in the slipstream. That buys you free lap time, essentially, and try and make the move later on. But Josh Martin, with a very odd line out of the final corner, now starts to defend. I thought for a second he was letting Axelson through, but he's not. He's defending into turn number 1, and Axelson is going to have to perhaps try and find a way through, otherwise he's going to risk losing lots of time. Right, Carroll has pitted. That drops him down to 7th position or so. My question, Jack, is this. I said earlier on that Elliot Dalton Ayres owed us a pit stop. You're telling me, though, that his tyres are not 21 laps old, so he must have pitted after that spin. So he is genuinely the race leader then, is that right?
He is, yes. He's doing currently lapping in 129.3. And normally on our timing screen, it's a little bit complicated to explain. But yes, he's done 21 laps, and then in brackets, he's done 19-pit, which means he's done 19 since his pit stop. And the reason why I know that is because Andy Carroll didn't have any in brackets. He just had 20 next to him, which means he hadn't done a pit stop. So very interesting to see that Elliot Dalton Ayres, he's actually, yes, on track. He's got track position for a race lead at the moment. Jens Verhoeven, I wonder if he... I'm just thinking Jens Verhoeven, he's stuck on the outside there. 1, because hardware failure means he can't transport back to the pits. And 2, if you do transport to the pits, you get disqualified. And I think you score points even if you don't finish, rather than get disqualified where you don't score any points then. So I think that's Jens Verhoeven's tactic. As Eric Axelson kicks up a little bit of dirt on the right-hand side. So I'm just trying to have a look on my track map exactly where Elliot Dalton Ayres is in comparison to Carl Felvis, because there's about 4 seconds difference between them.
Well, his last lap was 1.2 seconds slower than Kyle Felvis.
Yes.
Felvis is 4.6 back. That is going to be close, isn't it, given how many laps we're going to have left? I'm not actually convinced that Felvis is going to catch him. So, because remember, Felvis is on the soft tyres. So although Elliot Dalton Ayres' tyres are going a lot further than Felvis's tyres are having to go, they're able to do that because it's a harder compound of tyre, if you follow that. And in fact, Felvis is continuing to be caught by Joel Last. That gap down under 2 seconds now. So you're in safe hands here, everyone watching. We know everything that's going on, and we absolutely did not miss the fact that Elliot Dalton Ayres might just come out of this with a race win, having been turned into the barriers down at this part of the circuit in the early stages. He's crept under the radar. He has absolutely judged this strategy an improvised strategy. I think I said that before the race even began, that you have to be able to improvise your strategy on the fly, and that's what he did when he got spun into the barriers. It could have been the end of the race. It might actually end up being the thing that wins him the race, because that early pit stop was quite a treat.
Yeah, I'm slightly surprised he didn't go on the hard tyres, to be honest, but clearly he'd done probably more practice on the mediums. That was his original strategy, and he thought he'd give it a go. So, yeah, he may be falling off a cliff, but he might not be falling off a cliff as quickly as Carl Felvis is now. It's all very confusing, but to be honest, the next endurance event that we have, I've actually forgotten off the top of my head which track it is actually specifically, but I'm going to have to bring a notepad. Normally these 15-minute races or 20-minute races that we have, you just sort of turn up and you wing it. Well, I do anyway. But I think next time I'm going to have to sit down, have a notepad, and almost track track map everybody's race, because there's so many different storylines going on at any one time. We've been nothing but praising Eric Axelsson for the majority of this race, yet Elliot Dalton-Ayres arguably has done it better.
What we're going to do is we're going to send you a whiteboard and some marker pens. We're going to set you up with a webcam, and we'll just focus on you for the entire race. You can do some maths for 40 minutes and tell us exactly what's happening, because that's definitely above my pay grade. What I can tell you, these are some easy maths to do. Joel Lask is about to take second place in this race away from Carl Felvers. Carl Felvers is no longer catching the race leader, Elliot Dalton-Ayres, and Joel Lask is within a second of him now. He's in the slipstream heading up the back straight. 4 minutes to go, and this is now getting rather tasty. This, we thought, going to be for the race win. It looks now more likely that it's going to be for second position, but valuable points here. These are two of our early championship contenders, and Joel Lask and Carl Felvers will both know how important it is that they try and outscore the other here. Felvers is going to have a hard job doing it. He's at a tyre disadvantage. He said himself he didn't really expect to be that competitive around here, and Joel Lask is desperate to bounce back from a slightly disappointing couple of races, certainly the first race anyway, at Circuit of the Americas. Last time out, Dalton-Ayres is in the pit lane, so everything we were just saying, throw it out the window. He doesn't make it to the end of the race. He did still have to pit. I'm not entirely sure why he still had to pit, but in he comes anyway, and that now means the Felvers-Lask battle is for the race win.
I'm going to go ahead and blame the software there. It obviously wasn't my fault at all. It never is my fault. I never get anything wrong. But no, that was a bit of a strange one. I'm not entirely sure why or how that's occurred, but Elliot Dalton-Ayres, after doing it all, after all the praise and me saying that he's actually done it better than Eric Axelsson, ends up in the pits, which is a bit of a shame, because that would have been one hell of a story, wouldn't it, after being turned around in lap 1. But here it is. It's what we were expecting all along, which is Carl Felvers to take that race lead. That means Joel Lask is now fighting for a race victory. Josh Martin is still on the podium positions, but Eric Axelsson is putting an awful lot of pressure on him. Nathan Blank has also been turned around, but he currently sits in the top 5. And Andy Carroll, who went for an awfully long time on those tyres, has ended up being in 6th place because of it, and with a healthy gap to Elliot Dalton-Ayres.
Dalton-Ayres has changed to the soft tyres, by the way. That's not a huge surprise, but he's 9 seconds behind Andy Carroll, who's also on a relatively fresh set of soft. I don't think Dalton-Ayres will do any better than 7th now. So we can now focus on this fight for the victory, as we saw last time at Circuit of the Americas. Not at Circuit of the Americas, at wherever our last endurance race was, Road America, there we go. It all boils down to a sprint to the flag anyway. 2 more laps to go. The gap that time came down by another 0.3 of a second, so Joel Lask is now as close as he's ever been. Where does he make the move? It surely has to be up that back straight, but the one thing we don't know here, Jack, is how much hybrid these two have available. Joel Lask very sideways through turn 3 there. We don't know how much hybrid they've got available. Lask may have a tyre advantage, but has Felvers been saving some hybrid?
Well, I mean, that's the great mystery, which is slightly unfortunate for us here in the commentary booth, but with only 1 minute and 30 seconds left, we can be pretty safe in assuming that this is the penultimate lap. So anything they do have is going to be used in the next 3 minutes, or next 2.5 minutes or so, however long it is. It's going to be interesting, isn't it? I think the best thing we can do is exactly what Lewis is doing right now, and is sitting on board with Joel Lask, because it's going to be very obvious when someone hits the hybrid button, unless they both hit it at identical points, which would be rather annoying. But you can see, even though Carl Felvers is giving Joel Lask the toe, Kyle is pulling away. That means he is on the hybrid right now. Does Joel Lask pull him back in towards the end of the chicane, or is he a little bit more patient? We'll have to wait and see. Looks like he's going to have to be a little bit more patient as the pit window closes. They're not allowed to pit anymore. Not that anybody, we weren't expecting anybody to pit anyway, but just in case you were wondering. But look at that, sort of closing up of the chicane. That braking zone means that Joel Lask is right there in with an opportunity as they go over the start-finish line to start what will be the final lap of the race. Carl Felvers going defensive into turn 1. Joel Lask getting a fantastic run. Is he going to be late enough on the brakes? Is he going to carry enough momentum? No, he goes for the switchback, and he might have executed this to perfection, Andy.
But is that the right thing to do? Because now he's going to be ahead on the back straight. Again, we don't know the full hybrid story, but if Felvers can stay with him, he still has a shot at getting back into this. These two, remember, are a country mile clear of everybody else. They're 14 seconds up on Josh Martin, who looks like, well, he's still trying, remember, to fend off Eric Axelsson for that 3rd position. But can Kyle Felvers stay close enough now to Joel Lask to have a go at that back straight. I'd love to be riding on board with Felvers as we go onto that back straight to see if he closes in, how much he closes in, and try and figure out whether that's just down to the down to the slipstream, or whether it is down to the hybrid. In other news, Elliot Dalton-Ayres, who just set the fastest lap of the race, takes those points away from Eric Axelsen. Here we go though, this is it, go time for Kyle Felvers. And I would say he's closing. I think he had a bit of hybrid there. He's not closing in quickly though, is he? Now he is in the second phase of the straight. Joel Last feels the need to move to the middle of the road there. Just thinks about defending. Is Felvers going to be close enough to send it to the inside? Well, he's not given that option because the gap is closed. Only the outside lane is available and there's no way through there. Joel Last the car right on the apex through 10B. Gets good traction out of the chicane. And Kyle Felvers will have to set second place because Joel Last is back to winning ways. It's his second victory of the season and it couldn't have come at a better time for him. Last wins at Road Atlanta. Felvers in second place now. Is Josh Martin going to hang on to third? I think he will. Eric Axelsen just didn't quite have the tyre life left in the end to challenge for third, but that's a very, very good recovery drive from him. Martin third, Axelsen fourth, Nathan Blank some 7.2 seconds back should come home in fifth. There he is. Andy Carroll after that late pit stop will be sixth, and Elliot Dalton-Ayres after his really late pit stop will come home in seventh position. But Jack, that was a fantastic finish, a beautifully timed drive that from Joel Lask to get that second victory of the season.
Yeah, and we're just watching Elliot Dalton-Ayres, who's the Phantom race winner almost, wasn't he? We're not entirely sure why he came in again, but he did well to finish in 7th place by the end. And there's plenty of support in the YouTube chat for all the drivers, so thank you very much for getting involved and enjoying the 40-minute race. We hope that you enjoyed it as much as me and Andy did. I think you could tell that me and Andy were absolutely loving that one. Apparently Jens Verhoeven as well, a bit of an update on him. No hardware issues, apparently. The car was just broken, I believe. So, yeah, that's a bit of a shame for Jens Verhoeven because he was having a really good race. I think it was with Ethan Hill for the majority as Sam Zero comes across the line. Right, we'll be able to have a... we just watched the last couple, Nikki Taylor, of course, but we'll be able to have a quick chat with a few of the race victors and the podium sitters that are alongside them after this very quick advert.
Well, another intriguing 40-minute double-distance race here in the AGON by AOC Mazda MX5 Cup. Road Atlanta has delivered another thriller, and it delivers a second victory of the season for Joel Lask, who joins us now in the commentary box. Well, Joel, you kept us guessing right until the end of that race. Talk us through what was going through your mind in those final, 15 minutes or so, because you came out of the pit lane a lot further behind Kyle than we expected you to. Perhaps you can explain some of that, and then really had to chase him down.
Yeah, unfortunately, on my in-lap into the pit, I managed to put it sideways after the corkscrew at the start. So I was facing the wrong way, so I lost all that time that I needed to keep ahead. Got out of the pits and see Kyle go straight past me, which was frustrating. So I tried to make those mediums go as fast as possible because I knew towards the back end of the race those softs were going to go off and there was an opportunity to catch up. But I mean, I used all my push to pass. I did everything I could.
Yeah, we'd seen those mediums worked well in the first part of the race because kind of the same thing happened, didn't it? You reeled in Kyle over the end of that first stint, then you had that pit stop and had to do the same thing again. Was it always the plan to go medium, or was there a part of you that was tempted to try and mix things up?
No, it was going to be medium both times. The softs are great, don't get me wrong, but they just get a bit twitchy. I knew I could drop 3 or 4 tenths going onto the mediums and just have a bit of a softer drive, but yeah, I had to push that right to the end.
Talk us through that last lap because we thoroughly enjoyed watching it. You and Carl have had some good battles in previous championships and already so in the MX5s as well. But that move you made, was that sort of, I'm sure a lot of it was down to your own ability, but I'm sure also a lot of it was down to that superior tyre life. You just had the better grip through turn 1, it seemed.
Yeah, turn 1, I could see each lap closing in that I was quicker through there and was able to carry the speed more. And going into that last lap, it was do or die. I mean, fair play to Carl for keeping them softs for going as long as they did, because that shouldn't have happened. They should have gone off long before. So yeah, I have to give him credit for that.
It's a good return to form this for you as well, Joel, because I think it's fair to say that Circuit of the Americas didn't go that well for you. What was it? Was it just a circuit that you didn't click with, or because that's the one blip at the moment in what's been a really strong season?
Yeah, don't get me wrong, it's not my favourite track. First of the sprint races that we did round there, I made the mistake of going onto mediums, and that just didn't work. Everyone else went soft, so the second race was a bit better, but I was outpaced on that track. It just wasn't for me. I didn't click with it, but this was definitely a better track.
Well, absolutely. You've managed to bag that win. Lots of points going your way, which will help you in the championship as well. Kyle, congratulations. Really entertaining race to watch and a fantastic second victory of the season.
Cheers. Thank you.
Before I forget as well, Joel, the vote has also been done, I think, now in our broadcast chat, and we have decided that you are the recipient of the Driver of the Race award as well, because of that remarkable charge through the field. So even more to celebrate after that one.
Wicked. Cheers. Thanks.
So congratulations then to Joel Lasker, double winner in the championship, a double winner tonight as well, with the Driver of the Round award going his way. Jack, how about we have a word with the man that he pipped to the post there?
Yeah, Carl Felvis, that was, well, after starting on pole position, and let's face it, you got out-dragged to the first corner. Did you think at that point, ooh, this is going to be a little bit harder than I thought?
Yeah, Eric always gets good starts, so it's like it's inevitable, really, that Eric's gonna get you. But at that point, I sort of said to myself, right, let's follow. But then, as soon as Elliot started to close in, he sort of went to the right of me and boxed in behind Eric, and then obviously the incident happened. But yeah, as soon as Eric got past, I was a bit worried, but.
Well, I was going to say, you had us all a little bit worried, but picking those softs and making them last that long. We just heard, Joel comment on it. How on earth did you do it? Was it something you consciously knew you were going to have to do by picking the softs, or was it a case of, you didn't realise that everybody else was struggling as much?
I mean, I was always going soft. There was never a thought of the mediums for me. Nikki was also the same, and then decided to go mediums just before his pit stop. But yeah, soft was always the way for me.
And did they drop off as much as we were sort of expecting them to, or were you struggling by the last sort of 5 minutes of your stint?
I wouldn't say I was struggling as such. Just the pace wasn't as good as obviously brand new. I wasn't nearly spinning every corner, which is good. I was I wasn't struggling with, say, control. I was just struggling with the pace. It was just one lap too many.
Well, fair enough. I mean, it made it very entertaining from our perspective. Have we managed to change your minds slightly on these double distance races? Have you enjoyed that one?
Yeah, it was okay.
Not. God, you can admit it.
No. I still think, because it was quite a lonely race a lot of the time. Like, I had battles with Joel, which was probably the only person I battled apart from Eric right at the start. But yeah, I still think sprints are better for entertainment purposes and more so racing.
Well, I'll tell you what, go hard next time and you'll be half a second off, and then all of a sudden you'll be fighting a few more people, won't you? No, but congratulations, Carl. It was a really very entertaining race from our perspective to have you finishing in second place there, and well done on making the softs last.
Thanks.
Well, someone who definitely didn't have a lonely race was our third place man, Josh Martin. Josh, I'll confess, we didn't see an awful lot of your battle there to hold on to that podium place inside the last few minutes because we were focusing on the fight for the win. But we'd seen that Eric had caught you actually surprisingly well, given he was on much older tyres, but then couldn't quite find a way through. I'm guessing that your defensive skills were called into action to make sure that was the case.
Yeah, that was a very intense last 15 minutes. I honestly didn't think I was going to get a podium this week because I didn't have much time to practice. But no, I got a really good start. Kept my nose clean. Dodged a few little crashes. And yeah, then I found myself in P3. I think when I pitted, and I thought I'll extend it. I had a good gap to the guys who I thought were in fourth. If I'd extend a little bit to have good tyres for the end, save some hybrids, and I'd come out the pit lane to find Eric right behind me, which wasn't quite what I anticipated. I thought he was way out of my pit range. And then it was trying to keep him back, and obviously Eric's so fast. I gave it every bit I had. I was just chatting to him, and he gave it every bit he had. And yeah, my little tyre advantage definitely helped. But we went side by side quite a few times. But yeah, I had just enough to keep him back, and I think at the end I had a couple more hybrids left. But yeah, he was on my back bumper for that whole time.
It was an incredible battle to watch, the bits of it that we did see, and there's extra significance always on that battle when it's someone like Eric you're racing against, because you all know that Eric's going to be, one of the championship contenders, and I think we can definitely keep you in that conversation as well, the way your season's gone so far. You've not yet been out of the top 5. So how much was that on your mind, that, this was a chance to outscore the championship leader?
Yeah, Eric's my favourite person to race in this championship. He's so clean, so fast, and he just doesn't make mistakes. And when you're racing it, you're getting 100%. So it's always so rewarding to beat him just because he's so good. And yeah, I think I've had a really, really. I think consistency has been my strong point in this championship. I've definitely not been the quickest at any point. Like in this race, all my lap times are really, really consistent. I think over the whole championship, my positions have been very consistent, and I think that's what's keeping me somewhere in touch with the front guys.
Well, hey, you don't need to be the fastest driver on the grid to contend for a championship, that's for sure. And you're quick enough to bag the points when the opportunities are given to you. So, Josh, huge congratulations. Really nice to see you back on the podium. Second week in a row that you've been on the podium. And hopefully we'll be chatting to you again next week at Bridgehampton, a track that I'm not familiar with. Have you done much practice around there?
I've never even driven it or seen any videos or anything. It's going to be 100% new to me. So yeah, looking forward to it. I don't know what to expect.
I'll be honest, I didn't know it existed until about a month ago, so I'm with you on that one.
Just to add in a stat there for what Josh was saying with regards to his lap time consistency. In every lap that Josh has driven with us, in every championship, every race, his lap time consistency is 98.9%.
Wow.
Yeah,
I guess that's pretty impressive.
It's pretty good. It's pretty good.
Even in real life, consistency is always. I'm never normally the person who puts on pole in qualifying, but I'm normally really consistent, and that's always.
But if you look at the stats, so if you can remember Jordan Brennan, so yeah. Jordan's lap time consistency was 99%. So. Yeah, that's pretty good. 98.9 is pretty good.
He's on a different level.
It's a good thing we got rid of him, isn't
it? Amazing. So a great stat that, Rich. Thank you. You've outstatted me. I'm not happy about that. Yes, there we go. So Josh Martin really is Mr. Consistency. I'm sure we'll be trying to continue that consistent form in a week's time. Josh, great to have a chat with you as always. We'll see you again next week.
Cheers. Thank you very much.
So there you have it then, Jack. Another fascinating double distance 40-minute endurance race, whatever you want to call it. I call it exciting. I enjoyed that.
I absolutely did as well, and it's just something different to think about. In terms, as I said, I'm going to have to get my notepad out next time to try and figure it all out, and just to track everybody's movements, or indeed a VRRC licensed whiteboard and markers. I'll be gratefully.
It's in the post already, Jack.
I'm sure it is. Amazon Prime is on its way. But yeah, so It was really, really exciting. And it's led the championship to be a real sort of good point, especially as we're halfway through now. We'll be able to bring that up on the screen, I'm sure, in a couple of seconds' time, maybe. I'm hoping so anyway, because it is extremely tight at the top end of the order. There it is, in fact. Eric Axelson with 141 points. Joel Lask with 140. And if that isn't enough for you, Carl Felvis is only 5 points away from the championship lead as well in third place on 136. So all three of those drivers really are putting on one hell of a show in the MX5 hybrids here at the USA Tour. We got Josh Martin a little bit further back, as Andy said, probably still in the conversation, but is a little bit of an outside shout right now. Nicky Taylor, well, it wasn't his night. He's actually been in the YouTube chat and has been discussing the day with a few of the people that were involved in that. Elliot Dalton Ayres is in 6th place. It would have been an awful lot better, I imagine, if he didn't double pit stop, which we never really found out why. I'm sure we'll be able to figure that out before we get into the next week. Jens Verhoeven in 7th place, Andy Carroll in 8th, Ethan Hill in 9th, Reece Bell in 10th, and Sam Zero still in 11th place for the time being. But yeah, Andy, it was a brilliant evening of racing, wasn't it? And to be honest, if the rest of the season has been like the first half, I'm very, very looking forward to it.
Yeah, 100%. It's been an excellent first 4 events, and hard to believe that we are halfway through now. There you can see it. We've got another 2 sprint race nights to go, and another 2 double distance races as well. We go back to the sprint format in a week at this Bridgehampton circuit. I'm fascinated by this. Like I said, I'd never even heard of it. I'm used to pride myself on at least knowing of most racetracks in the world, but never heard of Bridgehampton, never seen a race around there. Really looking forward to that one. Sounds like all the drivers are heading into that one with a little bit of an unknown as well. Then we head to Sebring for another 40-minute race before the Virginia International Raceway, which again is a circuit I'm not that familiar with, other than I know all of the drivers who have driven it rave about it. That's another sprint race format there before the full Watkins Glen circuit will round out the championship, and it will be another one of those 40-minute pit stop races that will ultimately decide the championship. I think it's very likely that this championship's going to go right down to the wire, and it could all come down to one of those strategic rolls of the dice that ultimately makes the difference in the championship. So that is going to be a championship decider, well worth tuning in for. You won't want to miss it. Lots of good stuff coming up in the near future here at VRRC, though, Jack. Not just the AGON by AOC MX5 Cup, but plenty of other racing for people to get involved with too.
There absolutely is, and we'll be able to bring up the delightful graphic now. There we go. We've already spoken about the MX5 USA Tour, which we've been doing this evening. So that is the top left. If you focus your attention to the top right of your screen, you will see that there's a fun race, and it's a pick and mix, obviously, is how we decide the fun races these days. And this is all held on Sunday evenings from 7:30 qualifying. And by the looks of it, it's in some kind of prototype LMP style car. I'm not entirely sure which specific car that is, I'll be honest, because I haven't got the notes and it's slightly pixelated. But the track, actually, Rich is in here. What is it, Rich?
It's the Ligier JSP3.
There we go. The track is obviously the Sebring, which we're actually visiting on this USA Tour. Then we're going to the time attacks, the Melbourne, around Melbourne in the F3. I'm pretty sure, did we have that one last week? Is that, Rich, is that a slightly outdated graphic?
Oh, hang on. Let me have a quick look at the graphic.
It runs for 2 weeks. Apologies.
Runs for 2 weeks. Sorry.
Apologies. Didn't know that. That makes sense. You haven't done anything wrong, Rich. Don't worry. Not that I would be the one to tell you off about it anyway. But yeah, the time attack around Melbourne in an F3 car. That's certainly something you want to get involved in. There are prizes up for grabs on the time attack as well. And then is a free roam server that we now offer here at VRRC and GT Classic Legends around the LA Canyons, just somewhere to chill. Go on with your friends, listen to a podcast or something like that, and wind down, which I'm sure a few of the drivers will be needing to wind down after an eventful evening like we had here at Road Atlanta.
So I've just done a couple of laps of Bridgehampton. I think Thruxton, with a bit of gradient and a few more a couple more left-handers in it than Thruxton's got, but it's fast. It's a fast sweeping circuit.
Okay. Well, that sounds perfect for MX5s then. I'm expecting some good slipstreaming there. That's,
yeah,
good fun. Oh, well, there you go. So I will try and familiarise myself with where all the corners are on that track before next week. Don't worry. But yeah, really looking forward to experience.
Some go left and some go right, Andy.
Yeah, but you see, it's getting those the right way round that's always been my problem. So yes, I'll try and learn that before next Wednesday night. Right then, Jack, we are done for the night here at Road Atlanta. Excellent racing. Excellent to have you in here with me as well. As always, we'll both be back again in a week's time, along with Richard Lewis and the rest of the team here at the VRRC. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us as well. Been great to see you all getting involved in the YouTube chat. We do appreciate your interaction, so do keep that up. And we will see you all here again, same time, same place, in a week's time to kick off the second half of the season.